Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Checking In with Bryan and Jeremy. I'm Bryan.
I'm Jeremy.
And this week, we have a very special guest for you. We got to sit down with Sarah Dandashy while we were in Los Cabos, Mexico on our first Destinations by Reliance trip. And boy, was it a fun interview. Who knew?
Who knew?
Award-winning concierge, luxury hotel professional, expert, author of the book Hospitality from Within, which I've read. It's absolutely amazing. And a very unique first job. So
wait till you hear that part of the episode.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. So yeah, and just an all-around good person. Like, she's someone that was born with the hospitality gene.
Absolutely. She was such an asset to our first trip.
Yeah. So we can't wait to share it with you, and here it is.
This episode is brought to you by Reliance Hospitality, a global leader in hospitality consulting and services. Reliance Hospitality understands that your journey in the hospitality industry should be nothing short of unforgettable. With a comprehensive range of services tailored for every size and type of property, Reliance Hospitality is your go-to partner from the very first blueprint to your next big investment. Whether you're a budding hotel investor or looking to refine an established property, Reliance's cutting-edge management strategies ensure that every aspect of your venture is covered. So, if you're ready to elevate your hospitality business with unmatched expertise and innovative solutions, visit RelianceHospitality.com today. Let them take care of the details so you can focus on your next big deal.
Hello, everybody. Today we're joined by Sarah Dandashy.
You got it.
Fantastic best-selling author and TV
Travel
expert, podcaster in the hospitality industry. Rose up through the ranks of the hotel business. And now a constant face at conventions and magazines and
all over the place.
All of the above. And
all of the above.
Potentially, I'll see you again in Cannes this year.
I think that sounds like a good plan.
Yeah. So give the audience a little take from you. Like, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm Sarah Dandashy. I worked in the luxury hospitality space for nearly 20 years. Yes, if you're doing math, I started when I was 12. Kidding. But for a good number of the years, I was actually a concierge and part of Les Cabos, so the Gold Key, the Association of Gold Keys for Concierge, the ultimate professional organization for hotel concierge. And then in 2015, I won Best Young Concierge in the world, which is kind of fun. It's like there are guys involved, so it can't be like the Miss Universe, all right? But like the Olympics of concierge, so to speak. And I brought home the gold for the U.S.
Wow.
But in 2012, I started creating travel videos and basically what to eat, see, and do in LA, because that's where I was. Basically bringing my travel advice that I was doing at the concierge desk and bringing it to the internet, so to speak. And it grew. And it grew pretty quickly. And I happened to be at more of a luxury boutique property at the time that was a little bit more flexible, and they were forward thinking. They're like so supportive of me building out my social media brand, and they knew that it would be nothing but good for them. And so I ended up building out my whole brand, and now I cover travel trends on TV.
That's awesome.
I have 2 podcasts, because if one was not enough, 2. I also have a couple of private clients as well, too, that I don't necessarily always talk about, just for discretion. But that's a really fun way to kind of keep my finger on the pulse of things and staying true to my roots as far as being a concierge. But yeah, all over, speaker, wrote a book, you name it.
Well,
Never a dull moment.
So thrilled to have you be an inaugural member of Destinations by Reliance on our inaugural trip, our voyage here in Cabo. So thank you so much.
Of course.
We've literally had so much fun with you already.
It's been great.
How has your experience been?
Oh, so the experience has been phenomenal. What I love is it's perfectly curated, and you all have mastered one of my favorite tips that I always tell people is to plan but not overplan. I always say, just do not overplan, because you need a little bit of breathing room when you're on a trip. And I mean, as you know, and for people that follow me online, they're like, you don't stop. And I'm like, yeah, when I'm traveling for work, it's it is go, go, go. So this has been so wonderful to have some breathing room. We've done some really cool experiences, meeting everybody else as well, really like-minded. I love that. I feel like I'm leaving not only refreshed, but with many new friends.
Well, we're glad to hear that, because that was one of our principles from starting. Was we didn't want to be the tour or company that is giving you an itinerary that you have to be up in the lobby at 7 a.m.
Yep.
And we're going to take you to all these places and then try to get you back by 11 o'clock. And then we're going to do it all again tomorrow. And then you get home And
those sound like my work trips.
yeah, which to that point, we travel a significant amount of our year for work.
Yeah.
You travel all the time.
Totally.
And isn't it funny when you do speak to your friends? I'm sure your family do
Yeah.
it to you too. They're like, well, haven't you been able to relax because you've been in all these places? It's like, it's a different thing going
Totally.
to these locations when you're working as opposed
completely. I always joke around and say I sleep on the plane.
Right.
Yeah.
That's where I get caught up, on
Right.
the plane.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you there was a lot of pressure being the destinations concierge for Sarah Dandashy. Like,
I am
almost
an
I didn't even
easy
know if I should.
traveler. I am such an easy
You were
traveler,
such a
but you have
pleasure to
done a
work with.
phenomenal
Thank you,
job
thank you,
of
thank
just
you, thank you.
curating all the little things and the little special touches. And yeah,
Thank
I
you.
mean,
Well,
it's
it means a
again,
lot.
it's about like picking up on the little things without, you don't have to go overboard. It's just it's subtle things.
And I'm sure that this is a lot of what's in your book as well, because I'm so excited that you recently talked about a
yes.
copy. I'm going to go home and start reading it because these 7 pillars, there's just so much in that book. It seems like the COVID 2020, you almost looked at how the industry has shifted and
Totally.
evolved, and you really kind of made it very much understandable and inspirational too, so that people keep making hospitality better.
Well, leading up to, as much as I think I'm busy now, my schedule was insane. Like in 2019, I was still working at a hotel, couldn't quite let go, and I was very lucky that they were so supportive. But I was pretty much working full time, made the schedule, and we know that that's part of the flexibility of hospitality is that maybe you might work 10 days in a row, but then you can get 10 days off, whatever. So I pretty much did 35 trips while still working full time at the hotel.
Full time? I thought
yeah.
that was part time potentially.
Oh, yeah. No.
Wow.
Then towards the end of the year, I was like, we got to cut some of these hours. And then going into 2020, I was like, okay, we're definitely part time. And I knew that I was going to go out on my own. And then the pandemic happened. But yeah, as much as I thought that was like really jam packed, it was just this interesting time because my schedule finally slowed down, and I knew I always wanted to write a book, but it was like, what on? And I was like, I'm not going to tell a tell-all. That's just not. No.
It's been done before.
It's been done before. That's also like not who I am. I'm happy to share fun, crazy stories at dinner.
Yeah.
Which we have shared many.
Yes.
But that's where they go. But so I was like, how can I sort of do a nod to the industry as I have evolved and like grown through it? And so that's where Hospitality from Within, the book kind of came from. It was like, what are these lessons that I've learned along the way that, whether I learned them just from being, out there and just experiencing, just from working, or were they actual lessons that I've had other mentors share with me along the years? So kind of tied it all together, had a little bit of the history of hospitality, and then I think one of my favorite parts, well, two of my favorite parts of the book is one is I have really fun stories from concierge from around the world that they've shared these special, memorable moments that they've had with their guests. And what I love from that is that it really is this reminder that hospitality is universal. And it doesn't matter where you are, the language, the culture, the altitude, whatever, you know what I mean? Like there's just this understanding of hospitality, and it's been so special. And then the other thing is I'm a big fan of quotes. And so from doing my podcast, I've had the opportunity to speak with a lot of awesome people in the industry. So I got a couple of nice little nuggets and got to share that too, because what I always wanted and envisioned with this book is you don't want it to be dry or boring. Hospitality isn't boring. And
100%.
everybody's got different, levels that they're coming to a book with. So I wanted it to be really easily accessible. And it's a book that you can literally open up to a page and it's got a couple of quotes on the page and you can easily just take away like a nugget or two. Because we're all busy.
Yeah.
And especially if you're working at a hotel, what are you gonna do? Sit down and read like a long book that takes you 2 weeks?
Did you do an audiobook?
No. People
No.
keep telling me I should do an audiobook.
You should do an
that's
audiobook.
They're like, oh, your voice. And I was
That's
like,
next.
but I don't know if people want to hear this book as an audiobook.
You know what? I have been really getting into audiobooks, so
Okay.
I'm going to order your book on Amazon tonight.
Okay, fine.
And then I'll read it.
Okay.
and
And
then-
then you'll tell me I
And
need
then
to
I'll
make
tell
it.
you need to make it.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, fine.
And if you won't do it, maybe I'll read it for you.
Okay. Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
And I did just think too, I feel like even for training on property, like
Yeah.
taking a page or your audiobook. It's
Yeah.
like, hey guys, in our
True.
morning stand-up today, let's have 5 minutes of Sarah's way of excess.
Let's
you
have
know?
5 minutes of Sarah's
Let's
voice,
go for
as
pillar
though
number
you don't hear
one.
enough
Yeah.
of it. No, well, I love that you say that. And by the way, that also was what was such a special outcome from this book that I was not premeditated. I was like, I just want to share lessons and things that were important to me. And how it's been received has been so heartwarming. From you've got general managers to hotel owners that read the book, they love it. They come back, they order 50 or 100 for their entire staff. And you've got people from high-level execs to housekeepers that are reading the book. I love that I was doing my first batch of signing them and sending them out, and I happened to be at the Peninsula in Beverly Hills, which is where I'd worked before. And ironically, I was there working for a client of mine. And my big shipment of books came in, so I was signing and like sending them out. So I had them in my room. I step out of the room and I come back, and one of the housekeepers was cleaning my room, and she goes, Sarah. I was like, she's like, I don't know if you remember me, but I remember you from when you used to work here, like
Wow.
8 years ago or whatever at that point. And she's like, is it okay? Like, I don't want to get in trouble, but could I get a copy of your book? And I'm like, first of all, you would not get in trouble. And yes, how many copies would you all like? Like,
Yeah.
of course, and signed it and gave it to her. And it was just this beautiful, heartwarming moment that it was just everybody can find something in it, which
And read it.
And it
Sounds
says
like
something
you-
about her
yeah.
though too, because to have that effect on it, like they're obviously they liked you. They saw something they liked in you.
yeah.
When,
So-
I try to have fun with
Yeah.
You, like,
And those
wrote
housekeepers
it.
see people come and
Yeah.
go all the time.
yes.
So when they remember you from
Yeah.
8 years ago,
Yeah. Yeah.
And one thing I remember you once speaking about was that you wrote it in a manner that a housekeeper could understand what
Yeah.
is in the book.
Yeah,
You wanted to
it's
write
a
it
very
in that tone as well.
easy read because I mean,
it's not a business book. Then you're saying
no, it is.
it's a business book, but
a
it's not
business
a
book.
technical.
Yeah, but it's not dry.
Yeah.
But how? It's just, I mean, it's like when you think about hospitality isn't dry, and there is about having this emotional. Like I always like to say, hospitality is an emotional experience industry, and so it's like you have to connect
100%.
with people on so many different levels, and yeah, it's just all about being accessible.
So given the fact that we know since our lives are different today than they were
Very much.
4 or 5 years ago, and I think obviously everything's kind of back to what we call now normal. But where do you see our business, like from your perspective? What have you seen change as we exited COVID and now people are traveling again?
So it's interesting. First of all, like the boom is here and it's here to stay. So, for those that are either investing in travel or tourism or hospitality, all of that, it's only going to continue to grow. We've seen a huge shift as far as travelers and what they're putting emphasis on. And for them, they want experiences over things. We've talked about this for many years, but now we've really seen a shift for it. We could go, that's probably a segment for another time where you can look at like the housing market and people are like, okay, well, I'm not going to be able to afford a $4 million house. So why save up for a home? I'm just going to use my disposable income on traveling. We're seeing a huge trend of that, especially with younger travelers. So for those, hoteliers and tourism boards, like don't sleep on younger travelers because
Yes.
they also have money and they also want to spend and travel. So we're seeing that. But as far as like the guest experience, I think everybody's kind of relaxed a little bit as far as like their expectations. They want more. I know I've seen this over the years since I was working at some of the first 5-star, 5-diamond properties, like early on in my career. It was very much like you're the staff and then there were the guests, and there was really, I don't want to say a hierarchy, but there was definitely there was a big separation.
Yeah.
Where now I feel like a lot of guests want to be friendlier. And I think that you can absolutely do that in a professional way that doesn't cross any lines. I mean, I'm all for being very professional, but they just want something that feels more authentic and real.
Right.
And so we're seeing a lot of that and then that's why people come back to different properties. I always say this, that I mean, I know it's not just me. I've also seen this with friends of mine, that there are guests who will come back and they will stay at different properties for the concierge, for
Yes.
so-and-so, just because they found out that they've moved. So when you're able to create that type of relationship, that's amazing. So there's so much that's changed, but is far more experiential and they just want to be like comfortable.
Do you feel that's kind of like almost the experiential It's almost changed the role of the concierge in a way because it's a lot
Totally.
easier to book an experience or to find an experience because I've seen even some luxury properties that don't have a concierge anymore, and we're starting to just see how the role has shifted.
And I
Yeah.
see that to be more common than not necessarily in Europe, but especially here in the United States.
Yeah,
Depending
definitely.
on market.
Yeah.
But a lot of places where you would have a concierge before there isn't, and then, and I've had the conversation with hotel owners too, and the idea is, well, the front desk agent can help with that,
Ooh.
which,
Ooh.
it's not like at the end of the day, it's really a special
It is a
skill.
special, yeah.
It's like we wouldn't have the front desk agent do the revenue management.
No,
So-
exactly. And so I mean, it's interesting, and it does all depend on the market. It does depend on the property. You're so right. But there is a fine nuance that it takes to be a really good concierge because you're able to really read the guests pretty efficiently and give accurate recommendations. You're honest. You have you're in charge of their credit card and spending on whether you're booking a yacht or flowers or what, so it has to be somebody that's very comfortable and comfortable with people of all different backgrounds. So as far as, even my background, it wasn't like, oh, it's going to be too expensive for you. No, that's not for you to decide. It's for you to provide the options and then kind of see what they choose. But you're also equally as comfortable booking a private jet as you are telling them directions on how to take the metro, and there's no judgment in between.
Right.
But to me, it takes having the right mindset, and just and being able to be elevated enough and know, oh, the type of guests that generally come here like XYZ. And sometimes they want something a little bit, more economical, which is fine, but you just you have to feel them out in a way that doesn't make them feel.
You want them to remain in control.
Yeah, you want them to remain in control, but you also don't want them to feel, I've sometimes had people, they're, oh, I'm sorry, we're not spending a lot this time. And I'm like, this is your trip. Whatever you are comfortable with, you just tell me the parameters and then we build it out for you. So it's making sure that you can get people at ease as well.
Yeah.
But it is very different from, and I don't mean that to downplay a front desk agent. There are many front desk agents that end up going and becoming fantastic concierge, but they aren't really one and the same. They have to know the area.
And what's also a little difficult is when you're at the desk and you see one other person standing there, my recommendation just went from possibly a little more expensive to, the Mexican's right next door. Because it's just like, I don't have time.
Oh,
or I have a
100%.
guest right there. So that's, I think, another thing owners
that was always
sometimes think about.
very tough. I would work summers and sometimes I would have a line and I wouldn't have a break for 6-7 hours because I had a line of at least 3, 4, 5 people deep waiting to talk to me. And it would just be, and then you had to be, make sure that you acknowledge the person that's still waiting or several people that are still waiting so that they feel okay. And then you don't want to overly rush, but you still want to kind of expedite things with the person. Yeah. So again, all of these are such fine nuances that it's challenging to do. Also, generally speaking, there is a higher turnover at the front desk than other positions in a hotel. Maybe somebody's new to the area, whatever that is. And they don't know where the nearest CVS is.
Or a lot of times they're college students that are coming, they're going to be there for 6 months and then they leave. So they are learning.
I mean, I've heard this comment that and I just, sorry that we're harping on this, but there is such a difference between front desk and the concierge that, I mean, I know people that would ask for, and I have done this too when I've traveled, ask the front desk agent where the nearest pharmacy is or 7-Eleven or whatever. And I don't know. And I'm just okay, there's some basic things you should have an awareness of as far as where it is. But
and even if you don't know, you can at least fake it and look it up and try to.
I always say,
let me find
being
out what
a
the
good
closest one is.
concierge, it's all about it's a mindset because you're not going to know everything. Somebody can be okay, where can I get this random type of whiskey from whatever, and I'm and it's I'm not sure, but let me go ahead and find out for you. And I learned that very early on because I was thrown into being a concierge 3 weeks after moving to Los Angeles at a 5-star 5-diamond property. I didn't even know all the ins and outs of cars. I remember somebody was trying to book. They're oh, I want to do a Mercedes SUV or a BMW SUV. And I didn't know the different. And
levels
I was oh, we can do a 7 Series. And they're looking at me I'm oh, that's a sedan. just a boat of a sedan. But like I didn't know that at
Yeah.
the time. I was just like, I don't know these cars. But then, figuring it out, it was all about, let me find that out for you. And that is like the catchphrase that
Well,
saves
I think
you
that
from so many things.
the hidden secret, I think, on the concierge side, when it comes to economics and these, especially in major markets that
Yeah.
have conferences and things like that, I think that the local hospitality community, to extend to restaurants and nightclubs and things like that, they also rely on people sending them business. And
Totally.
when there's that cohesiveness in your city, in your market,
Exactly.
then you can typically that was why I always loved working in Chicago, because when I was in Chicago, all the hotels I worked at, we had a concierge
Yeah.
on staff, and you would ask for a recommendation just as a staff member, and you would go to these amazing places that didn't even show up on Yelp or anything
Yeah.
if you looked them up. But they were
Love
sending our
that.
guests there too, and then our guests were giving us amazing
Feedback.
because they had this great experience when, yeah, they could have gone to the place that's #1 on Google, but they
That may
were
not
#1 on
be.
Google because they paid to be #1 on Google.
Yeah.
They aren't
yeah.
really the best.
Well,
So,
exactly. There's so many different types of experiences
Yeah.
that you can have. And maybe they want something that's more authentic or local, or there's a special story to it. But as you were even mentioning, like a good concierge actually ends up having connections. So, and it's not just like, oh, I'm calling XYZ random restaurant. I'm calling this restaurant, but Sally's on the other end making the reservation, and I've actually known her for 8 years.
Yes.
Like she's gonna
And she
try and
can
move
get a
some
good
things
spot,
around,
maybe
Yeah.
Or like if they're completely sold out, be like, okay, let me try and do something like this. Like, maybe let them know they might have to wait 15 minutes, but I think we can make
Yeah.
it happen.
You're taking me back to the good old days, because I remember being a front desk agent, and people would ask or say they wanted to go to a specific restaurant,
Yeah.
and you knew in the back of your head when you're sending
Yeah.
them across the lobby, you knew they're never going to get in.
Yeah.
Instinctively, you're
Oh, totally.
I haven't been able to get in.
Yeah.
They're not going to be able to. And these concierges would, because of the relationship, all of a
Totally.
sudden it's they'd have a
They
table
get
at
you
7
in.
o'clock.
And you're
Yes.
like, how did that? Yeah. So
So
exactly
it's-
that. But then also,
Where back to our other point, the front desk agent. I was, as the director of front office, I
Yeah.
wouldn't have been able to pull that off either.
no. I mean, you might
No.
try
So,
calling
I
to
could try
give it
calling,
A
but-
for effort,
yeah.
'Cause
but
you don't have the
we never-
relationship.
But it's because
Yeah.
Sarah knew Sally.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But what I also love is that the other aspect of it is, those certain hot restaurants, and maybe you've experienced them and you're like, a little overrated. And then also being comfortable enough to say, happy to make that reservation for you, but just so
FYI.
it might be very sceney and less focused on food. So if you really want to focus on great food, this might be another option for you to consider. Yeah. So how you can, again, guide them if you're we know it's the hottest restaurant right now, but it's just going to be not a fun thing for them ultimately. So you can even guide them away from that.
Yeah. So in your new, with where you're at now
Yeah.
in your career, what do you spend the majority of your time doing? You have all these jobs.
I have a
but
lot.
obviously people are
Wear a lot
contacting
of
you to get
hats.
your advice.
Yeah.
But what's the #1 trending topic right now that people are asking you?
The #1 trending topic. People always ask me where they should go. And what's interesting with that is oh, what destination should I go to this summer? And I'm like, well,
Cabo.
oh yeah, well,
Yeah.
obviously Cabo.
Cabo,
But
yeah.
it depends on what they're looking for,
Yeah.
whether it's
No,
something within the
100%.
United States, whether it's more elevated and luxury, whether they just want something that's fun, that they can be with their family. So it's always such a hard, me being a true concierge, I can't just say what the best is. There is no such thing as
Yeah.
the best, because we're all so different. So then it turns into, has to turn into a conversation and be like, oh, I think you might like this, or you might like this. But yeah, I do wear a lot of hats. I say like a true concierge, I'm still doing a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
Do you
that's
feel
awesome.
like hotels are using AI? Do you see that as a trend, or to maybe come up with sometimes an itinerary? Or
So first of all, hotels have been using AI, but in different ways for some time. So it's not necessarily a new thing. I know, and this was many years ago, that they would use AI-generated texting services. So they would also help by saying that you could, if you check into a hotel, you can text oh, what time is checkout? And AI can let you know that. Or, oh, I'd like to have 2 towels sent up to my room. oh, great, we'll be right on that. So at least the AI is responding to the guest in real time, and then it goes ahead and it sends a message to housekeeping or front desk if they're asking something, there. So we have been using it, but I think we're only going to see it happening more and more, whether it's really figuring out availability and the rooms. I mean, it's not even, almost not even the tip of the iceberg. Like, I think it's just been like a hot topic, and we're going to see it infused in so many different ways to different technology platforms that we already use. But as far as like itineraries, I mean, I'm a huge fan of AI. So yeah, I mean, you can use it, but I always say you use it as a springboard. And then you...
It's a good brainstorming tool.
Yeah, brainstorming, springboard, and then you fine tune it. And as a true concierge, I always say, double check everything that is shared with you. So even like with Google, you can't necessarily just rely on Google, oh, this place should be open. Maybe you need to double check with a phone call, so.
Yeah, because if they're not updating their business listing.
Yeah, happens all the time.
Yeah.
Happens all the time.
What do you feel is the future of travel then? Like, hospitality travel, what do you feel? Where do you feel like we're headed then next?
I think it's just going to become more and more accessible, which is a great thing. Back in 2016, as Airbnb was like becoming really, really large, and there was this whole thing of like hotels versus Airbnb. And I actually even dabbled and did some work with Airbnb at the time, because I was like, as a hotelier, I'm not scared of Airbnb. There's so many, we want to make travel more accessible. Maybe somebody's they're traveling with a large family, and it makes more sense for them to stay in a home. Or maybe like they're doing a bachelorette party, whatever it is. Maybe it is less expensive. But the way I saw Airbnb is that it just made things more accessible, and it wasn't a threat to hotels. If anything, it's like, it should open hoteliers' minds that we're not just heads and beds. Yes, we want as many heads and beds as possible, but what is the guest experience? Do we have that cool rooftop that has an Instagrammable moment that somebody's going to take a photo of and like help do our marketing for us? Like, how else can we be attracting people? We've been to places before where you're not staying at that property, but some hotel might be known for their high tea, and you go and you do that, or they're known for their like speakeasy, and then you go there too. So there's, I think it's just becoming more accessible, and there are so many different types of travelers.
And it's funny about the Airbnb point. It's, if you look at the landscape as a whole,
and that's changed too.
The large franchise companies have, back in 2016, Airbnb, like, we've got to shut them down. We need to do this, we need to do that. And then during the pandemic, all of a sudden, some of them had started exploring it ahead of the pandemic, but then all of a sudden they started, putting out, now they are running their own luxury, like home services and things like that. But I think it also...
Marriott Homes and Villas, for example. Like, I mean, we've seen it with multiple brands.
Yeah,
not just
we see it with multiple brands now. So it's funny. I feel like short-term rentals are what the OTAs were 10 years ago.
Totally.
And now it's like, everybody needs to coexist. But to your point, it makes the travel more accessible, because like, I might book an Airbnb if it's a true vacation for me. But if it's a business trip, I'm going to make sure I stay at a hotel that I know is reliably, like, the internet's going to work. Like,
totally.
And it's in a place where I can grab quick food outside.
Exactly.
Like,
and
your needs are different.
Want to have different experiences. So I don't know. I've never been too afraid of the future of things, because it's constantly evolving, and travelers' needs and wants are evolving too. So to me, if anything, it's just exciting, because there's just so many more places that we can explore. And we can like also learn from different destinations. So maybe you've got like this is what I love about international travel is, I mean, as we all know, the United States, love living in the United States, but sometimes there's a lot of red tape. It's just a lot of regulations, this, that, whatever. But sometimes you can go to other places and there may be a little less red tape, and they can do these cool experiences. And you're like, oh, what can we take from that and be inspired with what we're doing at home, or when we're moving to a different property. So there's so many ways to get inspired by what other properties and experiences are happening out there. And so I think it's just going to continually evolve. It's hard to pinpoint exactly. I still think we're a little bit away from space travel, but
Yeah.
that could be a story
Hey.
for another day.
You can be the first person to test
Yeah,
that out.
yeah, exactly.
Well, I feel with your experience, you are the queen of luxury. And recently I was talking with the Regent, the very first Regent property for IHG in Santa Monica that's getting
Yeah.
ready to open soon. And I was just wondering, like, what advice would you give to them that's like brand new, the highest point of luxury, and or another property? Like, what do you feel it's really important if you are that 5-star luxury, you got to get this part of your property on point?
Train your staff.
Training.
Because there's so many things. I mean, and we've even had like conversations about this before this conversation, but
With Crania.
Yeah.
The Crania was so amazing. We
Yeah.
had a great, and then they said that they do trainings
exactly,
every week.
and
so
they
you're
do a
right.
lot of exactly at that restaurant. I was very lucky that when I fell into hospitality, I happened to be working at a Four Seasons, and I was 19, and they had incredible training, and so it taught me these core like tenets of hospitality at a high level. But I immediately felt like I was part of the family. I knew how to interact and engage with guests, even if my role in the property changed. But training is so important because it sets a standard, and it doesn't matter. Not everybody needs to be a 5-star property, but like whatever your property is, there should be a sort of consistency. And if you think about it, it's like, why do you always buy a Diet Coke? Because you know it's going to be the same
it's gonna be the
everywhere.
same, yeah.
Exactly. So, but we are this experience industry run by people, and we all know people are inherently not consistent.
Yes.
So, which is also what makes us wonderful.
Right.
Yep.
But how can you at least get everybody on the even playing field? So that's why training is so important. It sets the standard so everybody's on the same page, and it also builds that camaraderie, and it builds that team mentality, and I think there's higher retention levels, which is
Yes.
no big thing in hospitality now. Is like, how do we keep our staff with us? And it's like they need to feel a part of something.
Well, if you don't receive the training and you don't know
100%.
what you want to do or
Yeah.
what you need to do, it makes it hard
Totally.
to keep yourself, calm and cool in a stressful situation,
Exactly.
or know how to make those wow moments happen, because nobody's shown you simple things. And it's, going back to the beginning of like my career in Chicago, it was a concierge
Yeah.
that showed me and I'll never forget, because I honestly thought the woman was out of her mind.
Yeah.
I thought she was crazy.
I mean,
Like, there's a
concierge
ro-
are a little eccentric.
Like
I'll
there was
take
this
that.
romance, there was a romance package booked, and I read the rate description, and I'm like, it seems very easy, like a
Yeah.
bottle of champagne, 2 glasses, all this stuff. And we went up she took me to the room to show me how to set it up, because that was part of the training at the
Yeah.
hotel, that just in case the concierge wasn't available or was booked last minute, the front desk was able to set it up.
Yeah.
And she had an entire SOP on how the
amazing.
flower petals needed to be like run in from the front door, and then
Yes.
they need to go up the center of the bed, and they need to do all
Yes.
these things. And she's going around the room and like moving things and like doing this and doing that. And
Yeah.
I'm sitting there watching the woman thinking, who has time for this? But I will tell you, it paid off dividends in the future,
Of course.
because whenever there would be a last minute package, which would usually happen on like a Saturday night,
Of course.
the concierge desk is like slammed with restaurant reservations, and we've got somebody that booked this rate. I could go up in a split second
And do it.
and I would do it exactly. And then, I think the funny thing is we really didn't have technology these days. That she was the chef concierge at the hotel that showed me, and I think to this day, she probably, with technology now, she would probably make us take photos of how it was set up. And
Oh,
send them
probably.
back,
And just to make sure that
just to make sure that we were consistently doing it correct. But
yeah.
she was one of those people that I worked with early on that kind of shaped the fact of what my expectations
Yeah.
are. But it was because they showed you
It's
what the
all about
expectations
because think about it. We all come from different backgrounds,
Yeah.
like different experiences. Not all of us in
Some
hospitality
more,
grew-
some less.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not all of us grew up like going to luxury properties, and even if we did, would we necessarily put 2 and 2 together
Yeah.
that this is how the service should be? So
well, in
you
your
do
version of upscale and somebody else's version of upscale can be 2 different
This
things.
is true.
Like when I was a kid, when we started staying at the Hampton Inn, we thought we had met luxury.
Yeah,
They had a continental breakfast.
I mean, hey, it came with
right?
breakfast.
Exactly. So I guess I'm dating myself a little bit, because that was when they just came out. But that's the thing. And I see it time and time again, different places. It's like, yes, they might have stayed in a hotel, but you don't know what they've stayed in before. And then even if they worked and this is the number one thing I hear managers say, and I've heard hotel owners say this. A lot of people are in business, and I always just want to like stop in my tracks and turn around and say like, are you blankety blank blank kidding me?
Yeah.
Well, they worked at another hotel, but
great.
That's fantastic.
No.
But they didn't work at this hotel.
Exactly.
Like they need to know how to execute what you want to do.
100%.
This brand experience.
Yeah, because they may have
true.
they were working at the Marriott, and now they're working at the Hilton or an independent hotel.
You don't know.
You don't know. You need to
There's
guide
similar
them.
things that happen at hotels, but there's also different things, and it's also how it's executed.
Correct.
But I loved how you were talking about this as far as like the wow moments. I think a key part of the training is also making sure that your team and your employees feel like they have enough autonomy and authority that they can send an extra welcome beverage, or they can do this. And I think sometimes they have such tight like reins on the employees that they feel restricted, and they're like, well, these guests were really nice, but I'm gonna have to go to the back and ask so-and-so, and they're probably cranky just so I can send them a champagne. I don't wanna go through all that. Where if your front desk team, for example, knows that they can send like a bottle of champagne if it's the anniversary, or welcome drink, or fruit plate, whatever it is, you give them, and then they feel good because they made that decision. That was their decision that they made. And then the guest comes back and they're like, oh, I had a great time, and so-and-so did this little treat for me. So they can feel special.
And I think that's where the technology merging, like, I think some people are of the opinion, like, more technology as it gets integrated into our industry, it will lessen the need for certain people to do certain things. But I think it just changes the purpose of the people. And especially, it should be streamlined. And at the end of the day, okay, so maybe you're not necessarily writing a handwritten note anymore, but maybe you're sending them a text message.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, the couple times, and I can probably name them off on one hand, in the last year, like, it's been so rare now that I actually get something handwritten that when I do see it now, I like stop and look at it. And I'm not talking about the cards where they've like pre-printed the information.
No.
Thank you for being a Titanium Elite member.
No, not that. No,
it's a
handwritten notes. And it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be a lot, but it is funny because it's like, I know, I get it. Not everybody at the front desk feels like they have the appropriate, handwriting that's legible. But
it's not what you wrote. It's the fact you took the time to do it.
I always say go slow and do it. My
Totally.
first property that lit a fire under me and made me feel hospitality was this Marriott Suites on Clearwater Beach. And every day they told front desk agents, you have X amount of amenities. Like, please, the GM would say, if you see someone sniffling, send them a soup. And I felt very empowered as a front desk agent.
Yeah.
And it was my favorite
And what a nice thing to
and
do.
I fell in love.
Like, even something
love
as
with
simple as sending a
hospitality.
soup. Like, what does that really cost at the end of the day?
Yeah. About 77 cents.
Yeah.
We go.
Well, you know what, too? You're getting a lot to culture as well, because you can have the training, but if you also don't sustain it and do ongoing training
but
and
to your
create that culture.
point, so, and this is another thing, and I'm sure you've seen this, and people, this has happened. Well, I empower my staff. They can do what they need to do. But going back to the training, if you haven't shown them, that's why I think everybody needs, like, every front office needs to have a toolkit.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, like, you might be fine with them doing all of these things, but if you don't tell them or give them ideas of what they can do, it's the same situation.
Totally.
True.
They then don't do anything because they're worried that it could be the wrong thing.
Of course.
Even though you've said you can do it.
You can do it. Yeah, exactly.
So Sarah, what's next? What's on the horizon? Are we going to get a sequel potentially to your book?
How far are you done with your next book?
Oh my gosh, I have the title.
Really?
I have the title.
Can we break it on Check-In with Bryan and Jeremy? No, just kidding.
Not yet, but it's definitely in the works. So I do have a second book that I'm pretty inspired by. I'm trying to like time it up with maybe like a speaking engagement that I think it could tie it together pretty nicely. So I just need to flesh out the idea a little bit more, but I like it. So, but time is wild now. I'm traveling around all over the place. So one of these days, I think I'm just gonna have to like take 5 days or so, or maybe even just start with a long weekend and be like, okay, you have to like at least do the outline and like a bit of the introduction, because it's amazing how much you can eke out if you really just shut everything else out and focus on it. So
Absolutely.
we'll
Well,
see.
you write your books, correct? Like you don't. You
Yes,
told me. I
write
was
my
like,
books.
she doesn't get any assistants or like a
I mean, I have
writer or anything
I
like
have
that.
editors for
You have-
sure.
Okay.
But yes, but no, I did not have a ghostwriter. No,
Yeah,
I'm a firm
exactly.
believer.
That's why
No,
I was
I'm-
like, wow, she literally just, that's very inspirational.
Of
'cause
course.
Not everyone
Well,
would feel confident enough to say, you know what, I'm going to take my 20 years and just tell people, and hopefully it's going to help.
You
And
can write. It's
then it becomes a
honestly like you
top-selling
can
book.
write. One can write it. It's just like we all can do it. It might take longer, or you might, but like we all have the ability to do it. And so it's to trust your voice. And I mean, I've been lucky enough that I've written in so many different ways and understand the different ways of communicating. You know, whether it is like a more professional aspect through, hotel, whether it might be more conversational on like a blog post or a social media post, or even like writing my scripts for on camera. Very different type of sentence structure than it would be as something that's more formal. But yeah, no, for me, I write it all the way for sure.
So, any tips for when you're presenting at these conferences? Because Bryan was there in person, and I saw a lot of people also commenting online how great you did at a HOA's conference
Oh,
recently.
thank you.
Any advice or tips for presenters or other professionals that are going to do similar?
Yeah, I mean, well, honestly, it all depends on what you're doing. So it's one thing if you're the keynote, and then it's to be obviously, if you're getting keynote speaking opportunities, you've probably already done several speaking engagements. But I mean, it's to really just like know your content in and out so that you can kind of just flow with it and be very present. But in that particular case of a HOA, I was moderating a panel. And we had 6 CEOs or execs and 30 minutes. And it's like, we don't have a lot of time, but it's also knowing your place. So it's understanding when you're the keynote speaker, you're the driving force. But maybe if you're moderating, it's not about you, but you just need to keep it going. And so making sure that other people have
Make
that
sure you don't
moment.
spend 30 minutes on the first topic.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But making sure that everybody else, everybody has a moment to shine,
Yeah.
And that's like, because it's about them. It's not about you.
Yep.
You're just a facilitator.
Yep.
So it's really like understanding your role in it.
I love that.
And no ego.
We went to ITB,
Yes.
Berlin, loved it. Have you
Yes.
been to ITB?
I have not yet been, which is crazy.
All right, so next time,
Okay, next
we
time.
would love to go with you
Okay,
because
perfect.
we were just blown away. There was just every country representative. The CVBs
What a big
are there.
reminder of like how huge.
You realize how big the world is
Yeah.
at this
Seriously.
conference.
Totally.
I mean, like, was it Egypt?
Egypt, I met some.
We're surprised Egypt didn't bring their camels.
Yeah. It was
Yeah.
like very impressive.
It was very like
very impressive.
Huge.
Crazy enough, I had the best carbonara I've ever had in my life
Oh, like from,
out of a food truck
yeah.
on the convention floor.
That does not surprise me
Just
at all.
found the guy's business card the other day, thought I lost it. And I'm like, I'm saving it because next year, if it's not there, I'm going to
Go
find
it.
this food truck.
That's amazing.
I've just always dreamed of going to Fiji, and then all of a sudden I met hotels from Fiji and these guys from Fiji, and it was just a cool experience. I was wondering, do you have a travel conference or travel show that you have been to or that you do like?
Oh, I mean, there's so many. I mean, I've spoken a lot at there's the Travel and Adventure Show that happens in the United States, which is
Where is that at?
So it goes. What do they do? About like 8 or 10 different cities, and it's generally in the first part of the year.
I think they started in Phoenix this year. It was the first city.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember if they did but yes, but it's like New York, Atlanta, LA, Dallas, Chicago, DC, Boston, blah, 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 the whole thing. But that's very much like for travel consumers, which it's always fun. And it's always fun to get to speak at those and to see like travelers. But as far as like, I'm always open to them. There's also ILTM, which is the International Luxury Travel Marketplace. So that's also great for like luxury travel, but there are so many different conferences.
Yeah.
We could do a conference every week.
You could.
Seriously,
And then that's
seriously.
going back to your time to write the book. That's where I feel like it's so hard sometimes to decide, do I go to this or do I not go to it? But at the end of the day, you literally can spend your entire year just
Totally.
going to conferences.
And
then you don't get any, you got a lot of great ideas, but no time to execute.
Yeah, to execute. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So just being smart about it.
Yeah.
Any advice for someone who's maybe early in their career and wants to become a concierge?
Oh yeah. You know, I always say it's like just get started at least like at the hotel. Front desk is a great position to start to kind of like lead into being a concierge.
Absolutely.
But the other element is really just knowing your city, knowing the ins and outs, and all different types of options. So from the high level restaurants, like the steak restaurants, to the luxury spas, to something, you know, a little bit more neighborhoody. Just really know it inside and out. And if there is a concierge on property where you're working at, that's what you want to do. Let them know and be like, hey, I'd like to maybe like grow into this position one day, and maybe they can help guide you and mentor you.
That's such a great point. See, so good. The plane is like, it's saying,
It's your
yes,
chopper.
Sarah. No, absolutely.
And let's give concierges their due, because it's not, we've talked a lot about hotels,
Yeah.
but they're not just in hotels.
Correct. No.
Concierges exist in many different forms now.
That's such a
They
good
do.
point.
I mean, you have certain concierge that are with credit cards. You've got private concierge. There are certainly a lot of different forms. I am definitely partial to more of the hotel concierge because they're there on the ground.
Right.
Credit card concierge, fine. They definitely try to execute, but they're like half the time they're not even in the city where you're trying to book, which is not to necessarily say that they can't do it well. I have clients that book things with me in other cities. I mean, I try to lean heavily on my concierge contacts, so it's almost like an extension of myself with somebody local. But yeah, there are different types of there's pillow concierge, there's running concierge, there's like a whole.
And a lot of Fortune 500 companies have corporate ones on
Yes, they
staff in their offices.
They do. Yeah.
In the big cities, at least.
Yes.
So I think you arrived the same day that I did this week.
Yeah.
On Friday.
Uh-huh.
Yep. So we've been here about the same amount of time.
Yes.
So we've gotten to experience all the same things
We
together.
did.
You've been a fantastic travel buddy.
Well, thank you. I always like to say I'm a pretty easy traveler.
Hey,
it's fun.
I would go. That's why I said I could totally roll up to Cannes. So,
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We're gonna have to look into this. But you know, tell us so far what your experience with destinations has been since you arrived. I know you mentioned at the beginning you love that we've been able to keep relaxation time and free time scheduled in.
But you also have really curated some really special, fun activities. You know, we did a cooking class. We had this amazing, you know, sunset cruise that we did. But what I really like is also the other individuals that have been here as well, because that is part of who you're spending your time with.
Right. Yeah.
And so the whole thing has been curated so nicely that so kudos to you for that. It's been really fun.
And it's been amazing to watch all the guests this week that are really, we've got guests from all different industries, really. I mean, industries we would have never even like looked at. But how similar everyone's experiences are in different ways, and how everyone at the end of the day is trying to achieve the same goal. And it's just a matter of what process you use. And it's really the same process. It's just you're plugging and playing different facets of whatever your business is into.
Totally.
So.
And like fine tuning it based off of interests.
Right.
If they differ.
Yeah.
So our listeners and viewers want to support you. We want to support you. What is the best way? Is it going on askconcierge.com? Are there any other services or anything else that you're currently working on? Or that you want to promote?
No, I mean, I think that the best way, I mean, I'm fairly accessible on all social media platforms. That is just like part of who I've been for quite some time. So generally all my socials, Ask a Concierge. LinkedIn is my name, Sarah Dandashy. My website is askaconcierge.tv. .tv. You know, great blog posts up there all the time, and different ways that we can work together. So yes, I'm easy to be found.
We can easily stay in touch.
Yes.
And if you can't find you online, then you'll be at the next travel conference.
Exactly. If I'm MIA, there's an issue.
Yeah.
Well, you were just such a delight to be around. Since we met you, again, there was a little bit of pressure, but you made it so
Oh my gosh, no pressure.
You're just such
Please.
a delightful and beautiful person. So thank you so much for being a part of our first trip, our
and
first
so many
tour,
memories too.
Yes.
inaugural member of Destinations, and on our podcast that we're just launching. So
Of course.
just thank you so much, Sarah.
Very
We
much
really
appreciate it.
you.
Now, before you go,
Okay, yes.
we ask every guest.
Yes, you
Yes.
do.
So,
I know where this is going.
what crazy, unique, ironic story of travel can you give us that has happened that you have experienced? What is an experience that
She
you've
may
had
not be able
that?
to choose just one.
I guess
I know, right?
I need to choose one.
Years.
So I've got hotel. Should I do a hotel story or should I do
Ooh,
like?
let's do both.
I mean,
If you have them.
we rarely get a double dose.
Whoa, well we can double dip. I'm
So
into
yeah,
that.
I mean, if you're prepared, then
Okay, so we were so some interesting stories. So one of my, oh gosh, okay. So now I just thought of two hotel stories. But
the way it always happens.
Oh my gosh.
One leads to one
I
leads to the
know,
next.
it does. So this is interesting. So as a concierge, people always ask like, well, what can you do? And it's like anything so long as it's legal, moral, and doesn't hurt anybody. Like that's what.
That's a
fair.
great.
Yeah,
It's
fair.
so true and totally fair.
It's how we take business at hotels.
Exactly.
We'll do it.
Exactly. So, but it's interesting because, most of my requests have been relatively tame. And we were talking about this beforehand, that I think a lot of it's just being a female. I'm just not going to get asked things that are necessarily too risque. But I did have this one guy come into one of the properties I was working at. Beautiful, plummy British accent. And he comes by, he's like, oh, good evening, miss. And he's like, I'm in search of an escort for the evening. And I was like, an escort. And he's like, yes, an escort. And I was like, oh, like a car and driver?
That's a good way to spin it. Because you don't want to think, because
No, I actually thought he wanted a car. And I was actually
You're like,
legitimately
oh.
confused.
Especially the way he's
and like,
asking
oh,
and
does he
coming-
need like an escort, like somebody to drive him around?
and he's foreign, so
And he's
you're thinking
foreign.
maybe that's just what they call it.
I don't know.
Airport,
And he was like,
restaurant?
no, I mean like a young lady. And I was like, oh. Oh, well, I was like, well, unfortunately, that's not a recommendation I'm able to provide, but we do have LA Weekly. You can look at the back of LA Weekly and like, good luck with that. Or you can also go to the bar. That's always a fun time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was it was such a like silly moment. But I genuinely
You almost
was
want to ask,
trying
have
to.
you asked this to other concierges and
Right?
was their answer different? Like,
Yeah.
where-
Has anybody
know, I
really
can,
ever
like-
helped you with this
'cause,
request?
yeah,
I
it
can
seems like you can
guarantee
ask
that their
that
answers
stuff.
were probably different. They were probably going into, did you have a preference for hair color, sir?
Yeah.
But yeah.
Because
so-
it makes you wonder. People are very comfortable at People are abnormally comfortable asking certain
Yeah,
things.
people very.
become even
oh,
more
I've had
so
guys ask
lately.
me to like, can you go pick up some like lingerie and have it in our room? I'm surprising my fiance, and I want to have like some La Perla underwear in there, and I'm just like, oh, sure. Do we have a preference on type, sir? So it's always like, how intimate do you want to get? But people get very, very comfortable.
And I feel like it's gotten worse with
Probably.
texting.
texting? Oh yeah. Because they don't have to actually.
They
like,
don't
physically-
see you, so then the
True.
requests will come in
True.
because they just are writing it, and
Yeah.
they somehow think they're not going to encounter a human on the
Oh,
other side that's
no.
probably managed the request.
Oh yeah, like
So.
the ones that like pay for a specific type of movie on
Yeah.
in their room, and then they
Yeah.
come down. They're like, I didn't order that, and it's
Yeah.
like,
Which,
Yeah.
you know,
They
from
didn't.
the hotel operation side is funny. A lot of the brands have changed the standards where those movies aren't
course.
available anymore.
of course they aren't.
So those questions come in, and then you'll get a survey where the guest is unhappy that they couldn't get that. And
No.
yeah, and so you want,
No.
yeah, so, the proper thing I think to do is just to suggest to them, on your next visit to our hotel, we'd be more than happy to show you how to upgrade your internet connection to the premium tier so you can stream
Yeah.
faster.
Perfect. That's great.
But,
That's a nice way to shift things.
But the movies, those were the good old days.
That was definitely.
I didn't rent that. And then
Yeah,
we go back, well, no, it looks like
sure.
you've watched it for 3 minutes and 30 seconds.
Yes, that's when they go,
Yeah.
you guys can see that?
Yeah.
I'm like,
Oh
"Oh,
my
sir."
gosh. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
like-
I'm dying at
We
this
can take it off.
conversation.
Yeah. You're like,
Yeah.
well, clearly it didn't take long, but you got what you needed.
Yes. Luckily, I did not have to have too many of those conversations, but yeah, it's always funny. Like people get very comfortable in the things.
That
I just
story
find it
was
crazy that people, like-
hilarious, though.
I think well, we've talked about this before. I'm an introverted extrovert. But you could give me $1 million. I'm not going to walk up to somebody and say, I need an escort for tonight.
Yeah. That
I
would
like,
be no.
who does that?
I'd be far more resourceful.
Yeah.
Like we have the internet,
Like, use your
on
tools.
our phones. Like what's
Right, like-
what planet? But again, older individual, and so that's what it was. But there's always something. We were
Yeah.
also talking about this story, which just I think it just kind of shows you how things have just changed. But I one time got written up for wearing my hair curly at one of the properties, and like to show you how things have changed. Like I couldn't wear my hair
Have
down or
changed
curly. They wanted it
so
straight
much.
and back. I had to wear pantyhose.
Pantyhose
And if you got
was
to
the
run
number
in your
one
pantyhose,
thing
you
my
had to have a
female
replacement
colleagues
set.
always
Like you couldn't wear a
be so
pantyhose with
upset
like a
about.
run in them throughout your shift. I mean, that's simple
Thank
stuff. Like,
goodness that's evolved,
Oh, yes.
right?
Well, in the uniforms, I mean, the uniforms have definitely gotten better.
they have gotten better.
But like, I remember because I wasn't the skinniest front desk agent when I was a front desk agent, and they always made us wear these stupid little penguin vest things, and it's like it doesn't look good on anybody.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Even facial hair.
yes.
There was the longest time. It was
Yes,
like you could only,
yes.
if as a guy, you can only have a mustache. Like
Yeah.
you couldn't.
Yes.
And you couldn't
or
grow
you
it.
could- yeah.
In
So
between,
basically, however
yeah.
you came in,
Yeah, you have to do it
Yeah.
on PTO on your
yeah,
week off.
yeah. So
Yeah,
hopefully it
was
grows
crazy.
fast.
And they wouldn't allow beards.
They
No.
would not.
They wouldn't allow beards. So that was the
Oh,
only
and
facial hair.
tattoos. Remember
Yeah,
tattoos? They have to be
tattoos,
covered.
Super
You have
had
to
to be
have it
covered,
covered,
exactly.
Yeah.
or you couldn't have one
Which
at all.
our company allows them now. We didn't for a long time, but we followed the trend with the rest of the world. But it is a generational thing too, because when we talk to clients and they're reviewing our policies and procedures, that's always a topic of conversation. And I can usually tell when it's going to be, just because everybody has a personal opinion about it.
Of course.
Now, I wouldn't personally get a tattoo, but there are people that will, and
I don't have any tattoos, but I love tattoos.
yeah, as long as we can't see it, or we can see it and it's appropriate.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, no, and some brands have made it a part of their uniform, like Aloft,
Yeah.
Moxie.
Yeah.
Those are the brands that they said we want W.
Yeah.
They were like, you were a preferred hire.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you actually always wear your shirt like that?
When I first moved to Chicago, I applied for a job at the W Hotel, and I really wanted the job because I thought those were the cool kids. And I was coming from a small town in southern Indiana.
Yeah, of course.
Love W.
And
I'm a fan
I'm
of the
sitting in the lobby, and they had these skin-tight leather jumpsuits that they wore as their uniform at the time. And I will tell you, Sarah, to this day, I'm so thankful that I did not get called back for that job, because I wasn't concerned if I could work the hours, if I could learn the computer system, if I was going to be able to get along with the guests or my coworkers. It was, how the hell am I going to get in to that jumpsuit every day?
Right?
Boy, it worked out.
Right? It worked out how it was supposed to.
And I ended up at a different hotel where they gave me a beautiful vest.
There you go.
So,
what's been your favorite uniform? Because now he just made me think a uniform. I'm sure you've had a favorite.
are we allowed? How far back can we go with you? Because I mean, I feel like this.
What do you mean, how far back?
Have a bonus piece here. Can you educate us on your first job?
Oh, my first hotel job?
No, your first job in life.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is this where we're taking this
I
conversation?
mean, it's up to you.
Sure,
but
let's do
I
that.
mean, I find it to be
showcase.
I did share this the
You
other
did a little
night.
accent a moment
I
ago,
did
and
a
I was
little
like, I
accent.
know where she learned this. Yeah.
You do. So, I always had a love and passion for performing, and so at a young age, I even got myself an agent at like 12 years old when we were living in Atlanta, and but I also was just loved, like I liked period pieces, I liked Shakespeare, I liked all of that stuff, and there was a Renaissance festival in Georgia. And my very first job was I was a fairy sprite at the Georgia Renaissance Festival at 14 years old.
That's amazing.
Which I know this sounds silly and everybody's like, okay, ha ha ha, turkey legs. You probably had to wear like some weird outfit, all of that. But the practical side of it, of why it was actually so cool, is I got incredible improv training at a very young age. I had to create like bits in this whole life of this fairy that I was.
Which I'll say, improv, a practical hospitality skill.
Very practical.
It is.
And then what happened is I would basically have to be, I was one of the people in the town that was creating the ambiance of this old world. And I was on my feet for 8+ hours a day. In this particular case, prancing around like a fairy. Sometimes that doesn't change in hotels,
yeah.
But, but it was this great experience of knowing how to be on, you manage your energy, being on your feet, engaging with people. So I had these bits and like, I knew how to draw them in and, play with them, invite them into an experience. And when you think about that, now obviously this is in the world of the Renaissance Festival, but if you think about that, like in hospitality, that's what we're doing.
Yes.
We are inviting them into experience our property, our city, our destination. So very unusual first
It's
job.
unusual training.
But man, that set
but
up your
it really-
trajectory.
I know.
Yeah, I mean,
And so many people don't know that because they'll think, oh, she has an amazing experience, a concierge, and wrote this book. But that's how I feel like while you're on TV, and
Yeah,
have
well,
these amazing
And it
opportunities.
probably makes it.
Fine-tuned it a little bit from then.
through
Yeah,
years
maybe that's.
since her first job.
But yeah, no, I do have
a
a background in film and TV as well too. So
Were you a drama kid in high school too?
Yeah, I was.
Thank you so much for sharing this with us. And our
Among
viewers,
all
I
the
think
other
so many
clubs.
people don't know this about
No,
Sarah.
no, I've also
very
done quite a bit of
versatile.
film and TV. So and even in like radio, you name that. So this has been like the perfect blending of all my worlds.
And you were driven really from 12 years old. I don't know too many 12-year-olds that go and get themselves an agent.
Yeah, I've always been pretty driven. That it's like if I want to do something, it's been like okay, I just have to work for it. Why not?
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for letting us be a part of your world now.
Oh my
and for
goodness,
sharing
likewise.
such
Thank you so
beautiful
much.
What a
experiences.
wonderful experience this has been, and so I can't wait for more memories.
Awesome. We look
love
forward
you,
to it
Sarah.
too.
Thank you so much for
Thank
everything.
Thank you so much.
Be sure to check into next week's episode where we have multimedia and marketing expert, beauty and fashion consultant, and the author of the children's book, Charlie at the Pom Pom Springs Hotel, Miss Lara Yerdolian King. We sit down with Lara to discuss community service integration into hospitality, beauty and fashion tips while on the road, and some tips for traveling as a female during our inaugural destinations trip in Los Cabos, Mexico. Please be sure to also follow us on Instagram by going to @check_in podcast. New episodes drop every Monday. Check In with Bryan and Jeremy is a production of Reliance Hospitality and executive produced by Tyler Alexander.